In the shadowed anonymity of Seat 12F, a forgotten veteran clutched his daughter's hand until the roar of fighter jets shattered the sky and turned every eye toward a hero long overlooked. The early morning flight from Dallas to Seattle was a symphony of mundane chaos. The hum of engines warming up outside the terminal blended with the chatter of passengers shuffling through security lines, the beep of scanners, and the distant announcements echoing over the PA system. In the midst of it all, Jack Turner clutched his 7-year-old daughter Emma's hand tightly, navigating the crowd with the quiet determination of a man who had learned to blend into the background. His duffel bag slung over one shoulder, Emma's faded pink backpack dangling from the other, he moved like a shadow, unnoticed, unremarkable. Jack was 42, but the lines etched into his face made him look older. His hands, calloused from years turning wrenches in a dingy mechanic shop, bore the scars of hard labor. His clothes were clean but threadbare, a faded blue flannel shirt tucked into jeans that had seen better days, and scuffed work boots that whispered stories of long shifts and overtime that never quite covered the bills. Emma, with her messy curls and bright eyes, was his anchor in a world that had spun out of control 3 years ago. That's when his wife, Sarah, had been taken in a senseless car accident, a drunk driver on a rainy night. One moment, they were a family planning vacations and dreaming of a bigger house. The next, Jack was alone, drowning in grief and the relentless demands of single parenthood. This trip to Seattle was supposed to be a lifeline. His sister Lisa lived there and had offered him a job at her garage, a steady gig with benefits, something he hadn't had since leaving the Air Force a decade ago. He'd scraped together the money for tickets over months of side jobs, fixing neighbors' cars in his driveway after hours. Emma was excited about seeing Aunt Lisa and the Space Needle, but Jack carried the weight of uncertainty. What if it didn't work out? What if he failed her like he felt he'd failed Sarah? As they boarded the plane, the cabin was a microcosm of indifference. Passengers jostled for overhead space, eyes glued to phones or laptops. Jack guided Emma to seat 12F, a window seat at the back, where the engine noise would be louder but the view might distract her during takeoff. He lifted her backpack into the bin, then his duffel, ignoring the impatient huff from the businessman in the row ahead, a suit-clad executive with a Rolex that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. The woman in 12E, mid-30s and impeccably dressed, didn't even look up from her scrolling as Jack settled in. Flight attendants passed by with polite professional smiles, their eyes skimming over him like he was part of the upholstery. It didn't sting anymore. Jack had grown used to being invisible. In the Air Force, he'd been Ghost Turner, crew chief for the 27th Fighter Squadron at Langley Air Force Base. His call sign came from his uncanny ability to fix jets that seemed beyond repair, making them disappear from the maintenance logs overnight. He'd mentored young airmen, saved missions with his quick thinking, and earned respect from pilots who trusted him with their lives. But civilian life had stripped that away. Jobs were scarce for a veteran without a degree, and the VA benefits barely covered therapy for his lingering PTSD from deployments. Now he was just another struggling dad, overlooked in grocery lines, at parent-teacher conferences, and apparently on airplanes. Emma dozed off almost immediately, her head lolling against his arm, her small hand clutching a stuffed bear named Teddy, Sarah's last gift to her. Jack stared out the window at the tarmac, watching ground crews scurry like ants. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom with the usual spiel: safety instructions, cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, clear skies ahead, arrival in Seattle around noon. Jack tuned it out, his mind wandering to memories of Sarah's laughter on their last family trip, a beach vacation before everything shattered. But then the captain's tone shifted, pulling Jack back. Ladies and gentlemen, a quick update. We'll be routing through an active military training zone today. You might catch a glimpse of a couple F-22 Raptors escorting us briefly. It's all routine, nothing to worry about, just a standard exercise. A faint smile tugged at Jack's lips. F-22s. It'd been years since he'd seen those sleek beasts up close. Not since his days wrenching on them, ensuring every bolt was torqued to perfection, every system humming. Emma stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, are those the fast planes you used to fly?" He chuckled softly, ruffling her hair. "Not fly, sweetheart. I fixed them up, made them could zoom through the sky without a hitch. Your old man was a crew chief, remember? Call sign? Ghost." The flight attendant, a kind-faced woman named Maria, her name tag said so, overheard as she passed with a tray of pretzels. She paused, tilting her head. "You served in the Air Force?" Jack nodded modestly. Yes, ma'am. 27th Fighter Squadron. Long time ago now. Her eyes lit up with recognition. Ghost? I've heard that name. My brother was stationed at Langley. Said there was a legend of a crew chief who could diagnose engine issues by sound alone. Jack laughed quietly, a rare sound these days. Exaggerations, probably. I just did my job. Maria smiled thoughtfully and continued down the aisle. Jack didn't think much of it, turning back to Emma, who was now wide awake and peppering him with questions about jets and pilots. He obliged, spinning tales from his service days, omitting the scary parts, like the deployments to hot zones, where he'd worked under fire and the friends he'd lost. Those memories were locked away, surfacing only in nightmares. The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinging off. Passengers stirred, some heading to the lavatory, others ordering drinks. Jack pulled out a coloring book for Emma, watching her scribble happily. Then Maria returned, this time not alone. Beside her stood a tall, poised woman in a dark suit, an Air Force pin glinting on her lapel. She looked official, like someone who belonged in briefings rather than coach. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady and warm. "Are you Jack Turner? Ghost Turner?" Jack's heart skipped. No one had called him that in years. "I used to be. Who are you?" "Colonel Elena Hayes, Air Force liaison. Mind if I sit for a moment?" She gestured to the empty seat across the aisle, the one that haunted Jack with memories of Sarah. He nodded, bewildered. Emma peered curiously as Colonel Hayes settled in. "How did you know I was here?" Hayes smiled. "The network. Veterans look out for their own. Your name came up in a database check, routine for flights near training zones. But when we saw Ghost Turner, it rang bells. You might want to look out your window." Jack turned and his breath caught. Flanking the commercial jet were two F-22 Raptors, their angular frames slicing through the air like knives. The sun glinted off their canopies, and he could make out the pilots' helmets. One of them banked slightly closer, the jet's wings tilting in a precise maneuver. Then, astonishingly, the pilot raised a gloved hand in salute directly at Jack's window. Emma squealed in delight. "Daddy, they're waving at you!" Jack blinked, disbelief washing over him. "This can't be real." Hayes leaned in. "It is. Those pilots are from Langley. Captain Miguel Ruiz requested this escort personally when he heard you were aboard. Said you were his mentor back in 15. You taught him everything about those birds. Saved his bacon more than once during quals." Ruiz. The name hit Jack like a gust of wind. He'd been a cocky kid fresh out of tech school, full of bravado but green as grass. Jack had taken him under his wing, drilling him on hydraulics, avionics, the works. Kid had potential, but he was just a trainee. Not anymore. He's one of our aces now, leads training ops. When word got out about your situation, he pulled strings. Jack's situation, that's what they called it. Widowed, scraping by, on the edge of eviction before this trip. He'd never asked for help, too proud, but the veteran grapevine was relentless. Whispers from old squadron mates, a GoFundMe he'd refused, VA counselors checking in. Now this. The cabin buzzed with murmurs as more passengers noticed the spectacle. Phones emerged, capturing the spectacle. The businessman in front twisted around. What's going on? Military escort? Maria, passing by, beamed, honoring a veteran in seat 12F. Jack's throat tightened. The F-22 waggled their wings one last time, a fighter pilot's goodbye, before peeling away in a graceful arc, afterburners igniting in a roar that vibrated through the plane. Applause erupted, sporadic at first, then thundering. Emma clapped wildly, her face alight. "They're your friends, Daddy." "Yeah, kiddo," Jack whispered, voice thick. "They are." Hayes handed him a folded note. From Ruiz. With trembling hands, Jack opened it. "Sir, heard through the wire you've been grounded hard. You once told me a true airman lifts others up even when the engines fail. You saved my career, hell, my life, when I botched that inspection. Never forgot it. Today, we salute you. If you need anything, the squadron's got your six. Ghost forever. CAPT Miguel Ruiz." Tears blurred Jack's vision. He folded the note carefully, tucking it into his pocket like a talisman. Hayes stood. "There's more. We've arranged a base visit at Joint Base Lewis McChord tomorrow."
Ruiz and the team want to meet you and Emma. Full tour, maybe even a sim ride. Jack could only nod, words failing him. Gratitude swelled, a warmth he hadn't felt since Sarah's arms around him. The rest of the flight passed in a haze. Passengers who had ignored him now offered smiles, a few striking up conversations. The woman in 12E put down her phone. That was incredible. Thank you for your service. The businessman helped with bags during turbulence, sharing his own story of a brother in the Navy. Even the flight attendant slipped Emma extra cookies, whispering to Jack about how inspiring it was. As the plane descended into Seattle, rain pattering the windows, Jack reflected on the shift. He was still poor, still single, still fighting. Bills waited back home, and the job with Lisa was no guarantee. But for the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a ghost haunting his past, but as a man with a legacy.
Deplaning, the terminal felt different. Nods and handshakes followed him. At the gate, Hayes waited with a car arranged to Lisa's house. Welcome home, Ghost. That night in Lisa's cozy guest room, Emma chattered about jets until she fell asleep mid-sentence. Jack stood by the window, stars piercing the clouds. Somewhere, pilots who'd defied gravity remembered a mechanic who'd kept them aloft. It wasn't a cure-all, but it was fuel for his fresh start. A reminder that even in the vast sky, no one truly flies alone. The next day dawned crisp, the Puget Sound sparkling under a rare winter sun. Lisa drove them to Joint Base Lewis McChord, Emma bouncing in the back seat with excitement. Jack's nerves jangled. It had been a decade since he'd stepped foot on a base. The gate guards saluted as Hayes's credentials cleared them through. Hangars loomed, F-22s parked like sleeping predators. Ruiz met them at the squadron building, a broad-shouldered man in flight suit, no longer the kid Jack remembered. Ghost, damn, it's good to see you. They embraced like old comrades. Ruiz introduced the team, pilots, maintainers, a mix of fresh faces and grizzled vets. Emma's eyes widened at the jets up close, her small hand tracing the sleek fuselage. This is what Daddy fixed? Ruiz knelt to her level. Your dad didn't just fix them, he made them legends. Saved my hide once when a hydraulic line burst mid-prep. If not for him, I might not be here. The tour unfolded. Simulator rides where Jack relived the thrill of flight controls, albeit virtual. A briefing room where stories flowed like jet fuel, tales of deployments, close calls, and Ghost's infamous all-nighters. Emma got a junior pilot badge, pinned by Ruiz himself. Over lunch in the mess hall, conversation turned personal. Heard about Sarah, Ruiz said quietly. I'm sorry, man. And the struggle since. We set up a fund. Squadron chipped in. Not charity. Repayment. Jack protested, but Ruiz waved it off. You taught us family sticks together. This is family. By afternoon's end, Jack felt reborn. Emma clutched a Model F-22, a gift from the team. As they drove away, he glanced back at the base. A chapter closing yet reopening. Back at Lisa's, the job offer solidified. Lead mechanic with training for certifications. Nights brought calls from old squadron mates, offers of support. Jack enrolled in online classes, eyeing a future beyond survival. Months later, settled in Seattle, Jack stood at Emma's school play, no longer invisible. He was Ghost Turner, father, veteran, survivor. And in quiet moments, he'd look skyward, knowing wings still saluted him.